Hello everyone. This is not a story for the faint of heart. Today, we will be stepping into the darkness of the most gruesome cases, where evil not only exists, but also leaves bloody and haunting traces. This is Real Gruesome Murder Cases, a series of true stories about murders that made the whole world shudder. If you are ready to face the cold truth and the gruesome corners of humanity, come with me to delve deeper into each case, escaping neutrality. Good morning, Derek. Morning, Doc. How are you feeling today? Any more thoughts of harming? I had to interrupt her. Dr. Fuller was one of the better shrinks I'd had to deal with, but she was a real job's worth about following the script. It would be the same old introductory questions. She couldn't help but tick those boxes at the top of the day's crisp white form, still warm off the copier, but would be terrified of doing so unless I actually said the words. I struggled to find the patience to verbalize my repeated and identical statements. Ever noticed how stark our world has become? I asked out of the blue, cutting her off to her obvious annoyance. She sighed, then visibly gathered up a well-practiced decorum. "What do you mean by that?" she asked, abandoning the prescribed sheet for later and joining my real conversation. I was proud of her. "I mean that when we were children, the world was full of color. I'd wait to cross the road and see cars of gold, green, red, and blue fly past. I'd look down the street, and every house would be trimmed with sage guttering, burgundy window frames, or dark blue front doors. My bedroom was even painted a musky orange and had deep brown carpets at one point. It really offset the crimson of my lava lamp and the teal of my inflatable couch. But today, what do you see when you look around? I still see some of those things, but you're right. Most things are far more tastefully done these days. Do you miss your childhood? Would colorful surroundings bring you more comfort as you had back then? Tasteful, classy, reserved, miserable, soul-destroying, I said, hammering my point home and ignoring her textbook questions. Dr. Fuller really needed to up her game. But what could I expect from someone so new to the field? And so young. "I bet you drive a white car, huh, Tasha?" "Doctor." "Fuller, please, Derek." "Yes, I do." "Why is that relevant?" "Well, I know for a fact that they've made white the cheapest option. For any splash of color whatsoever, you have to pay a premium now. Is it any wonder that every modern car you see in the road is now white?" "I suppose not. Most, like me, cannot afford the extra expense." "What are you getting at here, Derek?" "Only that the world was fading, having its color drawn out, far before I was ever denied the sight of it." I did not register her next question. Her side of the conversation always included a question. I was distracted by the spontaneous idea that Dr. Fuller would have an office somewhere, and that there was a chance it might not be quite as bland as her car. Its walls might be covered in bright book spines, all in clear view from the comfortable, deep maroon couches. A myriad of certifications in shining wooden frames would sit side by side with calming vistas, no doubt depicting an unnamed ocean of calming blue spotted with colorful sailboats. I imagined it as being quite pleasant. Perhaps she was right. A throwback to my early years, drenched in technicolor, might have offered me some contentment. Useless to contemplate. I would never again see such a sight in this life. My imagined home for the dear doctor was a far cry from our current reality. Whitewashed concrete encased the bare room I was forced to meet her in daily. Gray, steel chairs and a matching table offered the only tint to the otherwise monochrome box. Tasha's wardrobe of endless white blouses and gray skirts might have been a choice, but I expected it was simply a subconscious effort to conform to the washed-out world that we both inhabited. "Did you hear what I said, Derek?" she asked, ducking her head to try and catch my vacant eyes. "No," I answered honestly. "Where were you?" Credit. Where credit is due, the doc had some skills. Instead of accelerating with her own agenda, she was able to pull into my lane at a moment's notice. Time to knock her off the road. "I was imagining where I would find you, outside of this place. Without these," I said, staring her directly in the eye and pulling sharply on the handcuffs that strapped my wrists to my chair. The loud and sudden clink of the metal chain startled her, and I watched as her pupils dilated in fear. It was the little pleasures. Telling the truth, but in a way that elicited the reaction I desired. It was all the entertainment I could find anymore. I thought she was done after that. Figured she would flee, never to return, to be replaced with yet another box-checking drone, fresh out of shrink school, wanting to prove they could handle the worst of the worst. Instead, she surprised me. "You will never again be without those, Derek, nor will you ever see the outside world freely. My job here is only to determine which walls will hold you. Do you understand that?" Tasha said, setting her jaw and returning my stare. Always another question with Doc Fuller. "I understand completely. I am not a simpleton," I snapped. Her resilience annoyed me. "I agree. It's quite the opposite, I think. You are clearly very intelligent, Derek. After these few sessions, I can see you are more than capable of self-reflection. So shall we stop wasting each other's time and get back on task? Pass your psych evaluation, and I'll put my recommendation in that you be transferred to Parkhurst and allowed regular yard time. Keep driving away your doctors and avoiding the issue with talk of cars and old bedroom decor, and you will remain here, isolated on the psych ward, for the rest of your sentence." "For the rest of my life," I corrected her. "If that is what you want, then I may as well leave now." She didn't move, a weak gambit that rarely fooled children. It never convinced mine. To use it, you had to be willing to follow through. I could never bring myself to let them out of my sight, much as Dr. Fuller would never have the courage to walk out of that door on the gamble that I'd call her back. I decided to give her the victory anyway. Let her feel powerful for a moment, before I took it all away. It would be preferable to see the blue of the sky again, I conceded. White rooms with gray furniture, guarded by monochrome uniforms, and visited by equally starkly adorned doctors, I said, gesturing at her up and down. I might as well be in heaven already for the level of cloud cover that surrounds me. "Do you believe in heaven?" Tasha asked, and just like that, with yet another question, the session resumed. It was the most personal question she had asked me yet. Her confidence was growing. I could not allow it to dwarf my own. Number she would need to regain her fear of me soon. I refused to admit that her earlier stoicism had ruffled me, yet I felt a growing urge to get the upper hand once more. She knew all too well I could never get close enough to harm her physically. I was too notorious for that kind of carelessness from the guards. I'd need to break her from a distance, and I planned to. "Of course, don't you?" I countered. "I'm not sure. I am yet to hear a convincing argument either way." "Coward," I whispered. "Belief is not something you can be convinced of. Do you believe you are destined for heaven, Derek?" "Why not?" I asked. "God forgives us all for the weakness of our flawed human existence. All we need do is seek and accept it." "And you have asked for forgiveness?" she ventured. I could hear the eagerness in her voice, the building excitement that it could be that easy, that I could give her what she needed to scribble on her form, and sleep easy, knowing she had succeeded in bringing a lost cause back from the brink. For what? I feigned ignorance. Baiting her was so easy. For your crimes. Come on, Doc. You can say it. I paused for only a second before exploding forward across the table as far as my clasped wrists would allow me, raining spittle that peppered her damn forms as I roared my best imitation of a literary detective. For murder most foul? I almost missed her reaction for my laughter. Psychologists were such fun. When will they realize that some behaviors are chosen simply for the entertainment of it, rather than the result of some past trauma? As it was, my eyes cleared from joy-induced tears just in time to see her recovering herself and returning to a normal position after trying in panic to escape her pale, metal seat. "You can try to scare me all you like, Derek," she said with breaths that had not quite slowed, "but I won't be leaving. Not as a result of any action of yours. I am your last chance, and I don't intend to be the reason this system fails you." All mirth left me, and my face dropped into a practiced blankness. I decided in that moment it was time to try a little more earnestly. No longer for my own enjoyment, but because I knew a truth that Tasha had yet to realize. I was never going to be transferred, no matter what I revealed to her. The only way I was ever going to see anything but the consuming whites of my cell again would be by my own hand. So, there was little point in her dance. I needed only one thing from the good doctor, and to get it, I wanted her distracted, nervous, and off-script. Straight-backed, head high, and glasses once more pushed up on her nose, Tasha Fuller tried her best to ignore my outburst and proceeded to ask her next question. "So, whether to God or man, you understand that you need to ask forgiveness for the deaths you caused?" "No," I said musically. I never stated the reason I would require forgiveness. No, my prayers are more centered around lust and gluttony. There are few pleasures left to me other than my imagination and my meals, I said, winking at the pretty little doctor. An exaggeration for her benefit. I could not truthfully admit to enjoying the white mush of potato and gray mystery meat I ate daily. Thinking of her, though, that worked. I liked them pale. "Derek, you are incarcerated here for the murder of your wife and 2 daughters. Do I need to explain to you again the gravity of your situation? If myself and my colleagues cannot determine an underlying cause for your violent behavior, then you are facing a lifetime of being classed as criminally insane. Would you rather a continuation of the treatment you get here, or are you willing to embrace the chance we are giving you? At Parkhurst, you might truly find rehabilitation. All of that is at your discretion, Doc. I am here, I am an open book. I have never lied. Not once. I pride myself on honesty," I said, raising my chin in challenge. "If you want the answers you seek, you simply need to ask the right questions, instead of these meaningless generalities." I watched her scour her memory and her notes, her eyes darting, looking for the truth in my words, until my meaning dawned on her. "Why? Why did you do it?" she asked immediately, blessedly direct. "Finally," I sighed. "Sometimes, after all that education, all that introspected study and exploration of the human condition, all you need do is ask a simple, straightforward, common sense and normal question. Why did I kill them? I was saving them." I heard the click of her pen and the scrawling of notes behind the steel clipboard. Now I had her, beyond her strict training, out of her depth. "Saving them from what?" she asked, the interest bright in her eyes. "They were under the power of demons. Their lives were already forfeit. I released their souls from their torture to be claimed by the sky. where they wait for me to join them. I would be there already if I were a stronger man. I shook my head and dropped my gaze, genuinely lamenting at my failure. Her scribbling continued for a few moments longer before stilling the room to silence. "You thought your family were possessed by demons?" Dr. Fuller attempted to confirm. "Are you stupid?" I yelled, snapping my head back up to meet her scrutiny. It was the only part of my body I was allowed autonomy over during the sessions. I didn't say possessed. I said they were under the power of demons. Through their muted screens, the endless stories pumped into their gray matter turned them into walking avatars for another's narrative. Their minds warped, their perception altered, and they were no longer the girls I knew. They began spouting the same garbage that was looping into our home from the black and gray bordered rectangles of controlled light. The only color in their lives coming from what was gifted by monsters via LED, while they systematically stole it from any other pursuit. My family became puppets to an evil's will. I took their souls and put them out of reach. I surrendered them into the protection of a power that exists in true light and color above our poisoned planet. I could feel my chest heaving. The passion from my torrent of words pumped through my veins. I could not stop the tears from streaming down my cheeks, the sobs from racking my body. My grief over the actions I had been forced to take broke free. It was real. I should not have had to take such drastic action, but it had been the only way. I heard the scrape of her chair as she pushed it back and rose, smelt the flowery perfume that wafted before her as she approached, and shuddered under the warmth of her hand on my shoulder. When the good doctor crouched and put her face on a level with mine, I hesitated. Her words were so kind. "It's all right now, Derek. I'm going to make sure you get the help you need." This would be a hard lesson for her to learn. I slammed my forehead into her glasses, shattering them against her face, and feeling the bone in her nose crack. It took a moment of delay for her body to catch up, but then quickly, crimson blood flowed down her face from her nose and the cuts around her eyes. I was not sure if it was hers or my own that I tasted on my cut lips. The deep red that painted our faces in unison was a desperately welcome tone amongst the stark. True color suddenly swamped the pallor of my world. It was glorious. It was relief. It was satisfaction. My head hit the back of my cell with such force that I feared the guards had already done the work for me. I laid still, stunned by the blow, and waited for my monochrome world to refocus. The white room and strong lights pierced inward, accelerating the headache that was to come. They would be back to take me to the infirmary soon enough. First, they would need to rescue poor Dr. Tasha Fuller from her minor injuries. She deserved their attention. She was the best shrink I'd ever had. She'd healed me and didn't even know it. From between my teeth, I dropped the shard of glass I'd bitten from her broken optics. I took it between my now free fingers and readied myself to join my family in salvation. From my body would birth a refuge of color amidst the sea of white. Just as they had, I would arise from a pool of bright crimson. Bathed at its center, I would finally be able to ascend to where a full spectrum of light would welcome me home, life and death. It took him 10 seconds to die. There's a lot he could have thought of in those 10 seconds. Likely among them was how he didn't want to die. There's a fear of the unknown in the heart of every human. An awareness that one day the end will come, that you won't have any control over it. Cultures around the world have stories of what will happen in death. Will you arrive at the pearly gates? Do you need payment for the ferryman to bring you to the afterlife? Or will you find yourself born again and again until you achieve enlightenment, regardless of what he believed in life? In the final moments, did it bring him comfort? Did it bring him peace? Or did he think of the past? Living by the lake, first fearing its depth as a tadpole before emerging as a conqueror, reliving the carefree moments of youth, of the rocks and sand between toes, and the sap from climbing trees, growing up with first 2 parents, then only one, knowing the sorrow that it can bring to one so young. Long nights at the bonfire, first with families, then with friends. The first look, the fire-glow skin, and the reflective eyes. With her came quick smiles, soft hands, and first times. The boy becoming a man as nights lengthened and the sky darkened. She left with the autumn breeze, and he left that lake too. He woke early and trained and marched. He climbed 4-meter walls, crossed ditches, spent hours at the firing range, and completed field exercises in combat gear. Discipline and mental fortitude brought on new meaning. And then they weren't exercises anymore. He would not have lingered on his military tours, but he would have seen faces of his comrades, dead and alive. With those that couldn't be saved, there'd be the guilt, the sadness, the regret. With those who survived, he'd always have a bond. His superiors who directed troops across the land. Civilians he had helped, who he hoped were doing as well as they could in a war-ravaged country. Together, they had molded him into a man with iron will and direction, rough around the edges, with kindness deep within his heart. It was a life that he'd relived in nightmares. When he left the military, he came back to the lake. Its calmness was a balm for his soul. Watching over it and the people who surrounded it calmed his mind and steadied his heart. His work was now to protect and serve the people, to wear a different uniform. He was wearing that uniform as he died. Would he be thinking of his family? He'd never been much of a cook, and he spent many nights at the Main Street diner. She too had come back to the lake, escaping the corporate ladder for the hustle and bustle of the small town, taking over the diner from the previous owners. They sat at the same table, night after night, week after week, month after month. She was a strong woman, able to stand on her own 2 feet, and with him as an equal. They'd chosen to walk their paths together, 2 homes and hearts becoming one. She'd know that this was a possibility with his work, and had never failed to say goodbye as he left. Would he take solace in this, knowing that she'd feel sorrow, grief, and pain, but that she'd be able to continue without him? Or would he worry the most about the pain in a tinier heart, to a soul that was just beginning to blossom? Ariel was 9 years old, his little girl who he had spent countless hours as a baby just counting 10 fingers and 10 toes. He taught her to ride a bike and throw a ball. They'd planned a camping trip for the summer. What would she think of his never coming back? Would she understand that it was his duty? Would she resent it and him? Would she remember all the times they'd shared? Would he be able to think at all? Would the pain override his thoughts in his last moments? Would his world focus only on that and the sounds that echoed around him? From the initial sound of the gunshot to the impact, the pain in his abdomen, and the retaliatory shot from his partner that took down the killer. They had been called for attempted shoplifting at a gas station near the highway. The cashier had caught him, and one of the customers became concerned when the situation had begun to escalate and called the police. They hadn't known about the gun. They hadn't known that the man had gone off his medications. What he did see was that there was a young boy in the store as well, no more than 12. Felix had gone in to get snacks while his dad filled the truck with gas. It was at him that the gun had been pointed in that moment. It was Felix that was saved when he died. Was it Felix that he thought of? The young boy he'd sacrificed his life to save. How would he spend his second chance at life? Would he go to the funeral and see the little girl crying in a black dress? Would he see her around school as his eyes closed for the last time? Would he see into the future? Felix becoming Ariel's self-appointed big brother and guardian, forever tied together by tragedy. Growing up together at the lake, him pushing her when required and comforting her when needed. Her ensuring that he focused on schoolwork as much as sports. Her scared and angry when he told her he was going to the police academy, that he wanted to help others like her father who had saved him. Through times of luck and difficulty, Ariel and Felix lived them together. And one day, down by the lake where they had grown up, where her father grew up, Ariel would walk down the aisle to him with her mother by her side. Ariel and Felix would live a long life together at the lake with their family. It wasn't always easy, with fights and sadness, but they came through. When their son was born, they named him Liam, after his grandfather, and sometimes they'd sit on the porch as dusk settled around them, holding hands, thinking about the man who'd given them both so much. Though he would miss all of those moments, the foresight and knowledge that they would be okay, that they'd live a life full of happiness and love, would that give him true peace? For in those 10 seconds, Liam lived. Betrayal. Mr. Nicholas, you have been caught for breaking and entering every house in the world once a year for as long as anyone can remember. That was what the judge said. Anything to say in your defense? Yet, Your Honor, I was delivering presents. For children, they were happy, stuttered Santa. A liar! You gave me a toy doll when I was 12 years old, yelled an adult. Well, I thought you wanted one, said Santa, wondering if this was a nightmare. And you didn't wipe your feet on the mat when you came in, said a very tall and skinny woman who was the shape of a pole. Now I have to walk around my house with the smell of reindeer dung. It's that bad? I sleep next to my reindeers, and they don't smell that bad. One very fat man, who looked like if you threw him from the tallest building, he would bounce, said, one day when I was little, I woke up on Christmas and went to my Christmas tree. I saw a box of chocolates, but guess what? It was out of date, guessed the judge. It was covered in reindeer poop, said the skinny lady. It was half-eaten? Asked another man. Wrong! He had put it under the tree. I couldn't reach it. Everyone let out a gasp, as if it was worse than what they said. The judge banged his hammer against the wooden plate. All right, it's settled. A lifetime in prison. He was shipped off to a prison for magical things. There he met the Tooth Fairy and Frosty the Snowman, a black bird with an injured wing, and a man called Jeff, who claimed he was a muffin, and Neil Gaiman. He did not know what Neil Gaiman was doing in there, but he told wonderful stories of Norse gods and a girl called Coraline. Meanwhile, the elves were relaxing in the North Pole. Every day, they would congratulate each other on how they got rid of Mr. Claus, and that it was about time that they got rid of the fatty. The reindeers were happy because they thought Santa stinked. But Mrs. Claus was the most excited. She could finally fulfill her dreams of playing video games all day, every day. Thousands of years passed, and Santa became more restless in his cage. The Tooth Fairy had been eaten by his bird more times than able to be counted. And the immortal Gaiman had told thousands of tales already, and Frosty had melted more than 1 million drops of water now. And Jeff, well, he sat there more than 1 million minutes already. Everyone was tired, and they were sick of seeing the same things every day: stone, metal, and plastic. One night, when the guards were walking past Santa's cell, he extended one thin finger and curled it around the key. He then pulled back his hand and put the key under his tongue in his mouth. He later took out the key and began to try and push it in on the other side. His fingers fumbled, and unfortunately, he dropped the key. From inside his pocket, he retrieved a foldable walking stick and began to prod at the key, trying to pull it back, when a mosquito landed on the back of his hand and sank its sucker into his flesh. Santa dropped the stick. He slapped the insect, turning it into a fat pile of greenish-yellow slime. He told his bird to go and fetch the stick. The bird did as he was told. Santa continued to prod at the key when Neil Gaiman couldn't take it anymore, and said that he should tell the bird to go and fetch the key instead of the stick. "You're right. So smart," said Santa in understanding. "Go get the key." A few hours later, he had escaped his cell and was now unlocking the cells of his friends. "All right, Muffin Man, you're okay now," said Santa. "I need my rock to turn into a muffin again," said Jeff gloomily. "Where is it then?" sighed Santa. "It's on the second floor of the third room to the right." "Have you been there?" asked Mr. Claus. "Duh, what do you think? Then why didn't you take it yourself?" "I didn't know how," said Jeff. It took some time, but the group eventually found the staircase and got into the specified room. Santa picked up the rock and said, "What do you mean you didn't know how?" asked Santa. Suddenly, 2 security guards stepped out of the shadows and told them to freeze and drop the rock. Santa leaped out of the closest window, thinking that his reindeers would catch him. He instead landed on a very fat moose in the middle of a barn. "Come down here, it's safe," he yelled at the window. One by one, they each plopped down Gaiman on a horse, Jeff on a pig, Frosty on a cow, and the Tooth Fairy on a very cross farmer. The fairy produced a chain of teeth out of her dress pocket and wrapped it around the farmer, like one would do to a horse. The group, holding on to their animals, eventually rode to the town where Santa's trial had been held, just in time for Christmas Eve. At the first house, belonging to the lady that had said her floor stank of reindeer dung, Frosty gave her some sanitizer under her tree. At the second house, belonging to the adult who complained about having been given a doll at the age of 12, Gaiman gave her 2 black button eyes and a sewing needle. And at the last house, belonging to the man, had complained about the chocolates. Santa gave him Jeff in his muffin form and put him on a plate next to the tree. Santa thanked everyone, and he went back to his home, the North Pole. The elves and reindeers groaned and sighed when they saw his familiar red suit. They kicked him out and built a wall around the village of Mrs. Claus. Santa realized that he was tired of seeing the elves, so he trained his bird to be a professional polar bear and penguin trainer, and everyone lived happily ever after. Attempted murder. New case, Noella. Thump. A stack of files in a manila folder lands on the desk in front of me, sending my papers flying. Great. Now my spotless office has papers everywhere. I huff and look up to glare at my boss's departing back. "No case summary?" He turns back, talking a few strides into the office and closing the door behind him. That's the good thing about being one of the top-ranking detectives in our firm. I get an office to myself. unlike others such as Otto and Shorelick, who have to share one. It gives the privacy and thinking space one needs when uncovering confidential cases. Young woman, aged in mid-20s. Her name is Enya Brown. Enya Brown? The Enya Brown I rescued from a dark alley a year ago? I turn back to him, nodding in acknowledgement. She's reported claims of stalking and attempted murder. Interesting. Any reason why I was given the case instead of the others? I might be a detective chief superintendent in our firm, but there should be plenty of others qualified to take this case, especially those in his inner circle who don't have other things such as helping to run the faculty to do. Celine's in Egypt, Henrik's in Germany, Jericho's sick, and Manuel, Maxime, and Molino are busy. I don't want anybody else but the best detectives for this case. It's pretty serious, and there's little evidence at this stage. Only the best could pull it off. He pauses. Oh, and the client specifically asked for you. Make the Annery Feralis Detective Agency proud Noella. Then he departs, leaving me to ponder the case. That still leaves Jane and Danny unaccounted for, and I have no doubt he knew that. But what's happened to Enya since that night in the alley? I told her to contact me if anything was amiss, and I've talked to her since then. But it's been precisely 13 months, 2 weeks, and 16 hours since I rescued her from the alley, and the incidents date back at least 2 years. Why now? It was 8:30 in the evening, and I'd stayed back at work a bit longer to finish up writing a case report. The weather was miserable, having rained just minutes before, and the cobblestones were slick with water. A yellowed glow came from the rustic street lamps along the pavement, limning the edges of my briefcase with gold. Then I heard the scuffles, the thud, and the scream. Alarmed, I raced towards the sound, approaching silently as to not raise any alarm. It came from the far reaches of an alleyway that, from experience, I knew to be a dead end. The scream sounded female. The grunt that followed was male. I peered into the alleyway to see an auburn-haired female struggling against a bulky, dark-haired male's solid grip. She was pinned to the wall, and the brute was touching her in awful places, pulling at her clothing and drawing a dagger as she fought back. She stilled at the sight of the knife, and knowing her chances were slim, I slipped silently down the alleyway. Within moments, I had my arms around the brute's neck and a foot hooked behind his ankle. He slashed with the knife, and without a second thought, I'd kicked it from his grasp. With the brute pinned on the ground and his neck held in submission, I choked the air out of his lungs, enough to render him unconscious, but no further. Quickly, I picked up my briefcase, glancing up to the young woman before me. She still hadn't run. "Are you all right?" "I'm okay, I suppose. Thank you." She looked away down the alley. "Will he be okay?" "He's just unconscious. He'll wake up in a few minutes, so we should head off. Do you need somewhere to stay?" She shook her head, but her eyes were distant. I shouldered off my coat, wrapping it around her shivering form. "Come on, girl. Let's get you somewhere safe. We'll get you nice and warm." Within 5 minutes, I directed her to a nearby hotel, had her swaddled in blankets and a cup of hot cocoa before her. She was too shaken to ask her any questions, but I could only assume what had happened. I remained with her for as long as I could, heading off home before my flatmate would worry about me. As I stood to leave, I retrieved a business card from my briefcase. "If you need anything, hun, just give me a call. I'm happy to help anytime you need it." I slipped it onto the table in front of her and quietly let myself out. The card on the table before her read DCS. Miss Noella Anderson, Anari Ferrales, Detective Agency, PH 0427738813, email noella@afta.org. Peeking my head into Skorlik Kuhn and Otto Schuster's office, it comes as no surprise that Otto is playing video games, and Skorlik is sitting on the windowsill reading a book. "New case, fellas. Briefing in my office in 10. An acknowledging grunt from Skorlik. "But I'm in the middle of the boss level, Noella. If you make me go now, I'll lose all my progress." Otto whines. "Suck it up, Otto. I've given you 10 minutes. That's enough. You shouldn't be playing video games anyway. You know that." He whines again, and I leave them to their activities, returning to my office. 10 minutes later, Skorlik enters my office, dragging a sullen Otto behind him by the wrist. We discuss the case, examining the details given and the evidence provided, both photographed and in hard copy. Skorlik and I figure out a plan forward, while Otto sulks. He'll confirm the DNA sample, while I trace emails and calls to Enya. Then we'll interview neighbors and retrieve security footage, then assemble the evidence and incriminate the offender. "What did you find?" I ask my co-workers. "DNA specimen confirmed," Skorlik says curtly. "Insights, Mr. Kuhn. There were a few sets of DNA on the letter, including Enya's own, but I narrowed down the suspect list to 2 brothers, Avery and Scott Lancaster, and another man called Jeremiah Hayes. They're the ones that fit Miss Brown's description. Mr. Hayes is suspected to be a friend of the 2 brothers. He could be involved with the case." Skorlik Kuhn sights back at his chair and glances at Otto Schuster, the other detective on my team for this case. "Anything new, Mr. Schuster?" "Quit the formalities, please. Nothing new, but I have a question." Skorlik, were both brothers' DNA on the letter? Indeterminate. Why? Unconfirmed. Well, I personally think the brothers are twins. Just saying. Any evidence, Otto? No? Search the database, though. I get the feeling they are. I search the database, and sure enough, they're twins. Paternal twins at that. Huh, look at that. Otto was right. They're identical twins, which explains why it's determinate. They have the same DNA. Skorlik nods, and Otto grins smugly. Well, fellas, guess we have our list of suspects. I traced the anonymous threat emails and calls to Miss Brown, to Avery Lancaster's house, and areas that he's reportedly visited. Oh, and it's not listed in the case. But after she was cornered in the lane, the ID card was found on the unconscious man, and it said, Avery P. Lancaster, precisely the person all our other evidence has pointed to. Other evidence, such as him being one of Ennia's ex-boyfriends and being one of Ennia's suggestions of the suspect. That Avery guy must be some sort of creep, considering the things on that file, Otto commented. I wonder what his middle name is. Peter? More like P for psychopath, I mumble under my breath. Psychopath starts with S idiot, Otto says, turning to Skorlik. He puts his hands up, trying to tell Otto it wasn't him, but Otto gives him a skeptical look. Dumbass, it starts with P. Skorlik mumbles, glancing back at me. Meeting over. I get up to leave as they start to squabble. Psychopath starts with P, Otto. You should have learnt that in high school, I say, leaving Skorlik's relieved face and Otto's infuriated expression behind me. Walking door to door in Avery Lancaster's neighborhood, Skorlik, Otto, and I have found very little. The young family that lives across the road said that he's a nice guy that tends to keep to himself, but they'd only moved in recently, so could not provide much detail. The lesbian couple and the old man living either side didn't know anything of interest. Overall, there wasn't too much evidence that they could provide, but they agreed to let us view their security feeds that had a view of his house. That only leaves interviewing Avery himself. Knock, knock. The hollow sound reverberates through my fist as I knock on Avery Lancaster's front door. Good morning. Is there anything I can do for you? Avery's puzzled face steps out from behind the door. Yes, sir. I am Detective Chief Superintendent Noella Anderson, and these are my colleagues, Otto Schuster and Skorlik Kuhn. We would like to talk to you for a minute, if that's okay with you? Of course. Is anything wrong, miss? He looks genuinely oblivious and concerned, and I'm nearly convinced he could be a great actor. We'll speak inside, please. Was it my brother? I told him that rock adventure was a bad idea. I raise a brow. Your brother is fine. If we may? He lets us in, leading us through impeccably neat rooms and into the dining room. It's business time. Do you know why we're here, Mr. Lancaster? If it's not my brother being a doofus, then no, I don't. Should I know? Perhaps. We are here to ask you a few questions about Ennia Brown. Brief pain flickers through his expression. Is Ennia okay? He says, barely a whisper. Considering what's been happening in her life lately, she is doing rather well. You wouldn't happen to know anything about her recent activity, would you, No, I don't. I haven't spoken to her since we broke up, and I haven't seen her since. Interesting. Did you know that she's filed a case for stalking and attempted murder with the AFDA? What? You are the prime suspect, and all the evidence leads to you. So if you could tell us the truth, that would be greatly appreciated. He nods. Now tell me again, when did you last see her? About 2 years ago. We went out with a few friends, but I didn't really talk to her. It was still awkward from the breakup. Right. Was anything of notice said? Scott said she was hot. Anya ignored me most of the evening. But no, nothing of notice. Now why did you and Anya break up? She was going to study overseas, and my grandmother had just died, so the timing wasn't great for either of us. It pained us both greatly, but we knew it was the best for both of us. Neither of us have been in a relationship since, at least as far as I'm aware. Would you be jealous if another guy showed interest in her? No? I would respect Anya's decision to move on. She deserves to enjoy her life. Oh, come on, Otto bursts out. Quit the sappiness. If you haven't seen her in 2 years, then explain why 1 year ago she was attacked in a dark alley by a man fitting your description, wielding a knife. A man, I might add, that had an ID card with the name Avery Lancaster on it, or why your name was encoded into a death threat letter to Anya, Shorlick adds, and why the threatening calls and emails were traced back to your very house. Avery gets paler and paler with every question, as if realizing that he has no way out, realizing that he didn't hide his tracks well enough, and he was caught. I don't understand what you mean. You hear what we said, Mr. Lancaster. Your DNA was found on the letter, and there are all these other cases of evidence. Do you mind if we have a look around? We show him our search warrant, and he nods solemnly. Avery leads us around the house, showing us through the different rooms of his house. There's nothing much of notice in any of the places we search. This guy is pretty good at hiding his evidence. And this is the guest bedroom. My brother keeps some of his stuff here sometimes. We nod and have a poke around. We're just about to finish up when I spot a discarded plastic bag in the wardrobe. What's that, Mr. Lancaster? I don't know. Some of my brother's stuff. He visits sometimes and keeps some stuff here. I don't monitor his stuff. This room is the only place I allow him to put his stuff wherever he wants, and I won't clean it up. May we look inside? Of course. We open the bag curiously, with our latex gloves on, as not to disturb the possible specimens. The bag opens to reveal a pair of worn, woolen, fingerless gloves, a roll of sticky tape, an ID card bearing Avery's details, and a few folded pieces of paper. Skorlick pulls out one of the pieces of paper and reads it aloud for my dearest Anya. Really, I thought you'd have noticed by now. Our connection is true, and I love you dearly. Must you always hide from me? Show me what you can do in bed. Can you do that? Otherwise, I will finish what I started that night in the alley. If I can't have you, no one can. Terror upon you, shall you not oblige? Take what you want from me, but I will always prevail. Do not fail me. Love from your dearest. I miss you. Dark, much, but that sounds an awful lot like a jealous lover's letter. Did you write this, Mr. Lancaster? Avery shakes his head, and his face is deathly pale from fear. Fear for Enya, or fear for himself? Well, you have a lot of evidence against you, sir. I would recommend you start telling the truth, or you'll be imprisoned for lying to authoritative figures. Understood? I only wish to tell you the truth, ma'am. I did not know that letter was here, nor do I know who wrote it. May we take it for evidence? Of course, ma'am. And with that, Otto, Shorlick, and I take our leave, sealing the evidence in decontaminated specimen bags and leaving Avery's ashen face behind. So, what do you think of our adventure today? Avery's house sure was suspicious. Yeah, I think we have enough evidence now, Otto adds. I think Avery is innocent, Skorlik murmurs under his breath. I cut my glare across the table to him. What? Did I hear that correctly? Otto shrugs. You do understand, Shorlick, that every single piece of evidence we have points to Avery Lancaster. But maybe that's what the criminal wants us to think. Everything points to Avery. But if he truly did it, there would be some degree of a cover-up. This is all in the open. It's too easy. Mr. Lancaster's DNA is on every specimen. His pining for a lost love threaded through threat letters, class, and emails, all traced to his house, a house his brother visits often. Think, Noella, think. Are you saying it was Avery's brother, Scott, that is doing this? What would be his motive, though? It makes no sense, Skorlik. It's obvious. It was Avery. Check the cams for the night of the alley attack. I pull up the feeds from various residents' security cameras and go back to the date of the attack. We watch as a car pulls up in front of Avery's house, and Avery gets out, knocking on the front door. Must be Scott, I conclude. And sure enough, a second Avery greets him at the door. They go inside, and about an hour later, one of the Lancaster twins comes out holding a plastic bag, and there's a lump under his hoodie near his hip. The knife he pulled on Enya. Turning up the audio, we hear a voice yell from inside the house. Can you get me milk while you're at the supermarket? Thanks. See ya, Scott. Scott comes outside and gets into one of the cars that had been parked outside before he'd arrived, presumably Avery's, and drives off. Why didn't he take his own? We skip ahead to the dates of the emails and calls from Avery's house, and Scott had visited on every single one of them. Didn't Avery mention something about Scott having the hots for Enya? And he seemed pretty concerned for her, Otto suggests. But Skorlik and I's attention is elsewhere. The letter. The realization dawns on both of us, and as I peer over his shoulder, I notice something I hadn't when he'd read it out. Each sentence is on a new line, and the first letter of every sentence forms another message. From Scott L. My face slackens with the realization. Do you see it, Skorlik? He nods solemnly. It all makes sense. Their DNA is the same. Being twins, Scott tried to avert the attention from him, turning it on his identical twin. But ultimately, his diversions failed. He's been found out. Otto. It was Scott. The letters and the ID card prove it. It was Scott. I murmur. So it was actually Scott C. Lancaster, the evil side to his angelic brother Avery, Otto says, in an exaggerated, scheming voice. Seems to me like his initial was a foretelling. C for criminal. He smirks, and we all burst out laughing, the relief enveloping me that Enya would finally be safe and that we'd done it. What would you like, sir? Sir, we need you. Ed, please don't panic. Tell me what happened. A man died at 4th Rose Street in Pi A Trust Bakery. Pray, tell his name? Robert Jr. Business tycoon Robert Jr. A sudden alarm switches on in my mind. You are right, sir. I hang up the phone. A new case is like coffee shots for me. Sudden shots of energy with a sudden smell of success. Being a private detective was tough in 1959. The remnants of World War were still haunting people's minds. So basically, everyone was behind food and money. Hence, the rise of murders and death of rich men were the constant headline of newspapers and weekly magazines. The police were sometimes behind the culprit, or were sometimes the culprit themselves. My first successful case was about Dorothy Maddock, a murder mystery that had shaken the neighborhood. At that time, I was 19, who had only read Sherlock Holmes as his curriculum and used to write some articles for a newspaper column. Back then, I took the case for justice, not for fame or success. With my wit and observation, I nabbed the murderer to everyone's surprise and dismay. The success of the case made fame kiss my toes, but the police grew cold feelings towards me. First, the bitterness was one-sided. Later, with the continued collision of our thinking and ideas, it became a competition for us to prove each other wrong. Coming to the case, Robert Jr. was famous as well as an established businessman. He was constantly in the newspaper due to the rounds of an affair between him and a beautiful singer. The case was a gold mine for the press because now it had glamour and stardom. I reached the spot. It was a small sit-in bakery with musty brown walls and white windows. It was unusual for a rich man to dine here. People were thronging outside the bakery to view the sudden death. Police were having a tough time trying to control the mob. I honk my Ford car on purpose to gain the attention of the press. In seconds, a group of photographers and cameramen with their journalists were rushing towards my car. I took some time to come out of my car, but when I came out, I was surrounded by the sudden flashes which blind my irises. There is a constant tugging and screaming of journalists at my face. I raise my hand to silence everyone, to bring their attention towards me. I will ensure that the culprit is caught, and the innocents are given justice. With the help of the police, we will solve the crime as soon as possible. Till then, please maintain your integrity and work ethics. I make a straight beeline towards the bakery, where I'm coldly welcomed by Inspector Houston. Don't come here, fella, without any prior information. Take your media attention somewhere else. He smirks. It would be better if you pay enough attention to your duty, rather than observing my style and sensibility. He stares at me and spits on the ground. So what are the details of the case, Mr. Houston? According to the witness, Robert entered the bakery with singer Sasha. They ordered a lime tart with lemonade. Then, in the middle of the conversation, an argument burst open. A few seconds later, he asks for water, which was given by Sasha from her bottle. In moments, he clenched his head and passed out. So, where is the singer now? She is in the basement of the bakery, hiding from the press. Bring in all the witnesses, and let's interview each one there itself. We agreed to investigate the scene first. Nothing was weird, nor there was anything suspicious. Then we interrogated each eyewitness. First was the singer Sasha, a beautiful woman in her early 20s, with blonde hair and blue eyes. Her cheeks were stained by mascara, and her lips quivered from the constant crying. It was odd that a young girl like her was interested in a man who was in his late 40s. But it is not odd in a patriarchal society. I gave her my handkerchief. A man gotta respect a lady's emotion. So, Miss Sasha, what happened during your brunch at the bakery? Robert called me here to discuss some private matters. He was stressed for the past few weeks. Can you guess what he was about to discuss? I ask. She moves her head from side to side with few sobs. Miss Sasha, when Robert asked for water. Instead, you could have called the waiter. Why did you provide it from your bottle? Robert liked clean filter water. He always used to question the quality of water at restaurants. Hence, I used to carry my own source. Did you hand over the bottle to the police? She nodded. The next person was the waitress, the only witness who was present at the bakery. A young woman in her mid-20s, with hazel eyes and raven black hair. She was confident with her body language and was least affected by the sudden death. What's your name? Rebecca Taylor. For how long you are working here? Since the past few weeks. Can you describe what happened this morning? Mr. Robert was coming to our bakery for the last few days, but this time he came with Miss Sasha. He ordered tart, and she ordered lemonade. It's wrong to eavesdrop on anybody's conversation, so I was at my counter cleaning the stoves. But in the middle of their conversation, they started arguing. Mr. Robert was demanding Miss Sasha to leave her career. Then he asked for water, to which she gave her own bottle, and in a matter of seconds, he clenched his head and fell on the ground. Where was the owner of the shop? Every morning, the owner goes to buy the supplies for the rest of the day. He went out as usual. The next person was the cleaner boy, who was not the witness. But he was there in the basement of the bakery when the incident took place. What's your name? Vade Danish. So, Vade Miss Rebecca told me that you went to the basement to take a puff of the cigarette. Sometimes you had to twist other people's confession to extract the truth. No, sir. Miss Rebecca had seen a few mice in our basement, so I went there to get rid of them. Okay, so for how long are you working here? 2 years. Everything was done. We talked to the witness. We investigated the scene, but couldn't find a clue. The police, as well as I, was waiting for the medical reports of the corpse, but it had a lot of time to it. Miss Sasha was on house arrest, and other people were under observation. I took a few days to search for the missing links in this case, but could not find one. This morning, I decided to give a visit to the bakery. Through the glass windows, I could see Rebecca taking orders from the customer and Vade helping his owner. I enter inside, and Rebecca gasps her breath seeing me. Did I frighten you, Miss Rebecca? No. I mean, yes. The incident has made us face the worst fears that we never could have expected. What will you like, sir? She asks in a humble tone. Oh, nothing. I just want to sit and relax for a few seconds. Nothing else. She goes away, leaving me in silence. I try to connect the information that I had about this case, but couldn't figure out any missing links. A force knocks at my temples. The migraine bouts were reoccurring every morning. I press my fingers at my head to ease out the pain. I search my pockets for the container of pills, but I couldn't find them. Sir, are you okay? I see Rebecca beside my table. Yeah, everything is fine. Nothing to bother about. She puts a tray in front of me. It has herb tea and strawberry custard. It's for your migraine, sir. It will soothe your nerves. I thank her and dig in my spoon because I have skipped my breakfast this morning. At the last spoon, a thought occurred to me. To clear it, I needed to meet the doctor who was examining the body as well as the reports. I rush out of the bakery without paying the bill and race my car to the hospital. Doctor, did Robert had a migraine? Because according to the witness, he clenched his head before passing out. Did he get a migraine attack while having the arguments with the singer? I don't know, lad. Maybe he had, maybe he hadn't. The technology isn't so developed to bring in the conclusions. What did you find in the reports? The mystery is that we couldn't find anything with his body. The brain and his other organs were intact, but his blood reports are weird. What does the report say? That during their argument, there was the sudden spike of salts in his blood flow. He had large quantities of salts in his body during his death, which we call hypernatremia. In hypernatremia, a person typically feels thirsty. The most serious symptoms of hypernatremia result from brain dysfunction. Severe hypernatremia can lead to confusion, muscle twitching, seizures, coma, and death. So, how did this condition occur in his body? Any clue? We couldn't find that, but the bottle that Miss Sasha gave had typically weird ingredients and salts. I think you should further investigate it. The police were informed about the reports, and we both rushed to the villa of the singer, who was currently under house arrest. Miss Sasha, we found salts and weird ingredients in your bottle, and Mr. Robert died from severe hypernatremia. The justice of sword points at you, because before he had passed away, he demanded water from you. I drink salt-infused water to keep my voice intact and to keep throat infections away. She started to sob and pleaded in front of us that she was innocent. She was taken in for police custody, and the court will manage the rest of the hearing. We gave a press conference about the case and addressed questions of the media. After a few days, I visited the bakery again to pay my pending bill and to meet the staff. The staff members were happy to see me and greeted me with warm smiles. I paid my bill and talked to each staff personally. Rebecca was happy and asked me about my migraine conditions. That day, how did you know that I got a mild migraine attack? My mother was suffering from migraine, so I recognized the symptoms really fast. So, you live with your mother? No, sir. My mother passed away a year ago. I live on my own. I'm sorry to hear about your mother. Well, take this. I take $50 from my wallet and hand it over to her. Take it as your tip and use it wisely. She takes the money and her warm finger brush with mine. Her cheeks tinge like strawberries, and she gives me a peck on the cheek. I smile at her and walk towards the door. Sir, please do come here again. I turn around and say, I will come if I have time. I know you will. I nod to her and sit into my car and drive to my home with a smile. I was watching a soap opera on television while cooking my dinner. Then I hear a knock on the front door. Who is there? I shout, switching off the television. Sir, it's me, Daniel. I take a sigh of relief and opened the door. Daniel was my counterpart, as well as my personal spy. He used to track the backstory of the cases, as well as the victim. So, Daniel, what brings you here? The back history of Robert Jr. Tell me the juicy details. He was a drug dealer in South Carolina and was once arrested while delivering a load of cocaine capsules. This businessman earns the white money with the help of the black money, I said. Listen, he used to execute his plans with the help of a female doctor, but after his arrest, she was absconding and still is on the wanted list. Here, see her photo. I take the file to view, and my head spins. I reach the kitchen counter for support. I could not believe my eyes. It was Rebecca. What happened? Daniel asked. She is the waitress who works at the bakery where Robert had died. For a few seconds, we glared at each other and rushed to our cars. I sped up my car, not worrying about getting a fine. I rush into the bakery and shout, Where is Rebecca? Vade rushes towards me with a note in his hand. Rebecca quit her job this morning and left a note for you. I take the note and read, Dear Thomas, take a warm coffee with a heavy breakfast to curb your migraine attacks. Before sleeping, drink a nice herbal tea. It will cure the migraine away. And what else will you like, sir? Your friend, Rebecca. Something catches my eye across the street, and I rush towards the window to see clearly. It's Rebecca, with rendered auburn hairs and a wicked smile. She waves at me, gives a flying kiss, and in the next second disappears. My first case. Aurelia location. My office room, 14. 5:21. So 900 a.m. I was sweating, not due to the heat. I was shivering, not because of the cold. It was all fear, nervousness. I saw myself in the mirror. My chocolatey brown skin glowed. My face seemed like a scared child. A woman in her 30s was standing at my door. Her face was pale, and her eyes were brimming. I felt Jack's presence in my room, so I tried to act normal. He touched my shoulders. Are you sure you can do this? I took a deep breath. Yes, I can. But actually, I wasn't confident. I let the woman inside my room. She said, my husband, Victor, wasn't picking up his phone. I checked his lab, and he was lying over there with blood all around. Please help me. I was noting everything in my diary. I looked up at her face again. So what's your good name? She whispered, Galena. I stared at her. So, ma'am, is your husband alive? Or location, Chem Tech Lab 14, 5/2021, 09:45 a.m. He was there, lying lifeless on the floor in a pool of blood. We wore our rubber gloves. The lab was such a mess. Whoever did that was clever enough to leave no clue. Our team examined the body and sent it for post-mortem reports. Jack stared at me. I got closer to him. I got this note. He had it clutched in his hands. He patted me. Okay, continue. It wasn't a note. Rather, it was a page from some kid's counting book. There were few numbers circled in it, and most of the words he had written on the page were either blotted due to sweat or soaked in blood. There was something scribbled, and next to it was written in a terrible handwriting, "Feel." That did ring a bell. Jack peeped into the paper. What is it? I replied, I guess it is feel, an archaic word for faithful, or maybe Fe is iron, Al is aluminum. Galena interrupted. No, it's Felix Allen. I got curious. Who's that? She glared outside the window. He's Victor's best friend, colleague, 10 years younger to him. Below that, there was blood, and the only thing I could read in between, that was Nikum. And Vier? Jack asked. Aura, what is Nikum? I took my eyes off the paper. Probably it's a surname. One of my classmates had it. I moved to the surveillance room. Galena followed me. This room is incomplete. There's nothing to check here, lady. Victor hasn't installed the cameras yet. After sealing the area, we met the watchman. Sir, you were supposed to be on duty last night. He nodded his head. Yes, ma'am. I walked closer to him. So what seemed unusual last night? He replied, Nothing of that sort, ma'am. As usual, Victor, Sir, and Felix had a terrible fight. And yes, he was the only one who came here last night. He tried to avoid eye contact with me. Galena came up. Victor and Felix fighting with each other doesn't surprise me. And she went away. Location: my office room, 14/5/2021, 3:00 p.m. I slowly asked, Jack, how was I doing yesterday? He chuckled. Like how beginners do. The post-mortem report arrived. Jack glanced at me. Aura, what does the report say? I responded, Nothing unusual. Cause of death is hemorrhage. Time of death is 02:47 a.m. He sat beside me. What did you derive from the bizarre note? I took a sip of my coffee. I've given the note to Elena to find out the order of numbers he circled. Through the past ink detector, Elena entered the room with her usual radiant smile. Here you go, Aura. I and Jack peeped into it. The numbers he circled were 66, 57, 7, 8, 74, 68. I made funky faces. What is this? Probably this guy went nuts before he died. Jack stared at me. The only one who's going nuts is you. Listen, beginner. See, there are 10 digits. Probably this is a phone number. Unable to control my curiosity, I dialed the number to check. It said, This is Felix. I'm busy. Leave a voice message. I felt so embarrassed, even though it was my first case. Location: Felix's house, 15/5/2021, 8 a.m. I knocked at the door. I was nervous, excited, and don't know what else. The door opened. A man, probably in his 50s, stood there. He wore short floral trousers and a white, crumpled shirt. May I know who's this? I beamed. I'm Aura. Aurelia. Don't you remember me, Uncle? I'm Felix's college friend. He smiled back. Yes, I do. Look, girl, you've grown up. I chuckled. Felix was in his room. And what surprised me was the room consisted of both Akara Nikom and Dylan Ower. I felt like it was turning from an investigation to a reunion party. Felix was too in shock. A positive shock. He hugged me. Oh my God, this day is too good. A few minutes ago, I was telling these guys how upset I am for you weren't here, and he asked me to take a seat. I'll get you something to eat. By the way, Dylan and Akara got married. You know? They're working with us. I reminded myself I had some work over there. I went inside Felix's kitchen. Phil, would you mind if I stay here with you tonight? I need to talk something in private. He beamed. Yeah, sure. He got too excited. Back in his room, I looked all around. Akara said, So how's life going for you? I chuckled. Oh, it's crazy. What about you guys? What are you guys working on? Akara replied, This project is supposed to be confidential. I joined this group just last week, as soon as I got married to Dylan. He is the one who introduced this to me. I owe him a lot. Dylan chuckled. Don't mention it, girl. Everybody in the room had wide smiles. Location: Felix's house. 15/5/2021, 10:00 a.m. The day was almost over. Dylan and Akara had left. I felt butterflies in my stomach. Felix was so happy. I was afraid what I had in stock for him would blow away his sunshine like a smile. But on the other hand, what if he turns out to be a venomous snake? What if he was the culprit? All such thoughts were passing in my mind. He sat close to me. Hey, I too have a lot to talk with you. Where should we start from? I frowned. Why are you whispering? He looked embarrassed. I don't know. And he pulled himself a little bit farther from me. We stared at each other for a second. And then he started. You used to say you wanted to become a detective. Did that happen? I sighed. Coming to that point, I am a detective now, and I'm extremely sorry to tell you that Hector is dead. He chuckled. Come on. Your pranks are seriously outdated. I was gonna say that you've changed, but you're still the same. I showed him my ID. Phil, I'm serious. Your friend died day before yesterday. Tears started to drip from his eyes. Are you serious? I nodded my head. A minute later, I asked him, how frequently did you and Victor fight? He softly said, I need a break. And he went off to the balcony and wandered. He came back. I repeated the question. He sighed. Every time we met, we used to fight a bit. Sometimes for fun, and the other times seriously. But the last time wasn't my fault. He was the one who slashed his knife at me. He pulled his shirt to show his blood-stained bandage on his stomach. When I started bleeding, I left the room shouting at him. I stared at him. So, you mean to say you did nothing when he slashed the knife at you? He went on weeping. I had stopped talking to him for a week. And then that day, I went to sort out our issue. And he did this to me. I bit my lips. The watchman heard you guys fighting. He said you were the only one who met him last night. His eyes reflected fear. I don't remember seeing any watchmen over there. He shoved his head into his hands and went on weeping. He slowly rubbed his right hand on his old cut mark on his left wrist. I asked him, "I know it hurts a lot, but what was the fight about?" He was still rubbing the cut. "I don't know. He was hiding something about the project, and I almost did everything in the project, but he never paid me on time. Or maybe he never paid me. I was struck in a terrible financial situation." He went on weeping. I thought maybe this played as a motive to kill him. Location: Chemtech Lab, 16/5/2021, 09:30 a.m. Back at the lab, I met the watchman. "Hey, good morning. What else do you know about Felix's and Victor's fight?" He waited for a second and said, "Well, you know, lady, they fight for the silliest thing in the world to the most serious thing in the world. Felix would frequently threaten to quit the project if he wasn't paid. He never understood that Victor was too in a financial issue. He wasn't able to pay his daughter's fees." I asked, "Anything else?" He thought for a moment again and said, "Few days before they fought, Felix stole the money Victor had for paying Irina's fees. He said it was an emergency. Victor was very upset because they suspended his daughter from school for a month." I nodded my head. "So was the fight verbal or physical?" He didn't waste a second. "Physical?" Galina gave me the key to the lab. "Hello?" I asked her. "If you don't mind, shall I ask you something?" She nodded her head. I started. What kind of relationship did Felix and Victor have? She shifted her hair falling on her face. "Victor used to treat him like his own brother, but suddenly things started to fall apart." I then asked her, "What about Dylan and Akara?" Galina replied, "They're cool. They've joined recently. Victor told that if the project was compatible with these guys, then he would no longer need Felix." I roamed around the lab and started feeling thirsty. So I walked myself to a nearby shop, leaving Jack in the lab. I asked for juice. He passed it to me. "So, ma'am, are you the one investigating Viktor Antonov's murder case?" I nodded my head. "Yes, I am the one." He came near to me. Don't trust the watchman over there," I whispered. "Why?" He said, "Madam, that fool is a booze head. He drinks every night and goes to the backyard of the lab and lies down there." I was like, "Okay." "What?" I quietly came back and whispered into Jack's ears. Now I was very confused about what to trust and what not to. I checked the lab for more clues. Galina asked us to join her for lunch. Location: Victor's home, 16/5/2021, 11:30 a.m. As Galina was preparing lunch, I roamed around the house. I met his 14-year-old Irina over there. She was in her room, sad. I went to her. "Hey, do "Do you want to paint?" She said, "No." I knew what she was going through. I sat beside her. "I know it's hard." She turned towards me. "I was thrown out of the school. Gradually, Felix stopped taking my tuitions, and now Dad is gone." She wept. I told her, "We'll find out who did that to your dad, and we'll put him in jail." I asked her, "What kind of tutor was Felix?" She blushed. "Who? Felix? He was great. He used to take my math tuitions. I don't know. The last few days when he took my tuitions, his eyes were red, and he was pretty distracted. And in the middle of nowhere, my dad pulled him to his room and smacked him badly. I never knew why. Galina came to the room, pulling Irina, and whispered, "Don't talk about that idiot in our home." There was a strong motive for Felix to murder Victor. He faced a series of depression during his college day, and when he came out of that, he came out violent. I found an unposted letter over there. It was from Victor to Felix. I tried to read it, but due to Galina's presence, I put it into my pocket. Location: Felix's house, 16/5/2021, 3:45 p.m. His father asked me to wait in Felix's room while he had gone somewhere out. I found another letter in his home. This was probably 2 months old. I took both of the letters and read them. It was written in 50% English and 50% Russian. The Russian part was written in English fonts. There was nothing new, while the whole letter said that he was sorry for what he did. There was nothing he could do to help Felix. But the last 2 lines struck me. It said, "Never nikom, mene ochen zal." Don't trust anyone. I'm really sorry. I tried to match it with the note clutched in his hand. It was never Akra Nikom or Dylan Ower, with only half of the spelling visible. But I felt, if he had mentioned it in this note, too, did that mean Victor was gonna take revenge for his murder with that note? But that would be really melodramatic to write sorry, and all while you die. I looked at the letter even closely for clues. That's when I found out. The scribbling before feel meant ask feel. I smiled. I said to myself, Aura, he probably wanted the finder of his body to ask Felix about something, or maybe he wanted us to question him. I could hear Felix's voice and footsteps. I put the letters in my right pocket and the note in my left pocket. I already had a note, too, where I had arranged those numbers in order. He was still in the same condition. He smiled, but not from his heart. I tried not to waste time. Feel? What are your comments on this note? He slightly glanced at it. That's my phone number, but the commas are crazy. In between them, I sighed. What would it mean with the commas? Suppose you find this number somewhere not related to you. He pulled that note from me and stared at it. He constantly mumbled to himself. After 5 minutes, he said, If I went by the element's atomic number. 66, 57, 7, 8, 74, 68 would mean dysprosium, lanthanum, nitrogen, oxygen, tungsten, and erbium. I stared at him. And if we go by its symbols, then di-la-n-o-w-er. His eyes were filled with horror. Jack called me. Hey, Ora, Achara is murdered. She just died a few minutes ago in my arms and told me. I interrupted. I know the rest. Just come to Felix's house and give him protection. I'll catch him. We'll find out the why. After that, murder warning. This is quite long. On Google Docs, it was 8 pages and 1,617 words long. I hope you like it, though. Eleanor Gray knew who the suspect was. She was one of the best detectives in Europe and never got a case wrong. But this one was different. Different because it was harder than her previous ones. Harder because all the suspects she had chosen could be guilty or innocent. It could be Riley or Olivia, but she knew it definitely wasn't Emma. Emma was too sweet. But Eleanor had chosen Emma as one of her suspects because she was there for the entire murder. She heard the helpless screams. She saw the scarlet blood. She saw the silver knife gleaming under the moon, dripped in blood. And she didn't do anything the entire time. Miss Gray. And for a while, Eleanor forgot she was at court. Miss Gray, may I not need you to forget that you are at court at this moment. You may daydream all you like when you leave, but for the moment, you shall pay full attention to me and the conversation. Judge Chester explained. I apologize, ma'am. I shall pay attention now, Eleanor said kindly. Judge Chester was very strict, but she was Miss Gray's favorite judge. She knew how to get the job done, and she never underestimated Eleanor, most likely because she was Judge Chester's once-removed cousin. Now, the judge said, let's get back to work. Miss Gray, would you like to tell us who you think the suspect is? Or would you like your last 3 suspects to explain what they were doing? I would like my suspects to explain first, please. Suspect number 1, Olivia Bailey. Explain what you were doing at the time of the murder, Judge Chester shouted over the microphone. My name is Olivia Bailey. A red-headed girl stood up with mint green eyes and a brown tan. She was wearing a long yellow flower dress with a jean jacket over it. And I did not murder Miss Amelia Bailey because she is my sister. Anybody who tries to kill her sister is a maniac. And may I inform you kindly that I cared for my sister deeply. I may not have shown her much affection like most siblings do, but now that she is dead, I regret it. I should have shown her more love. I was offended at the fact that you chose me as a suspect. Miss Gray, explain why you have chosen Mrs. Bailey as a suspect. Eleanor started explaining. I have chosen Olivia Bailey as one of my suspects for many reasons. 1. She may be Miss Amelia's sister, but sometimes the suspect is the one that is the least thought of. When the Bailey sisters were growing up, they fought a lot, and most of the time, Amelia won. This murder may have been Olivia's revenge. 2. Mrs. Olivia has been absent often, and found mostly at weapon shops. The knife used was a knife Olivia once bought. She may have bought it to kill her sister. At this, Olivia looked horrified. She looked as if she was about to scream and cry. But thankfully, she kept her mouth shut. So Eleanor went on. But the knife may as well have been found by the murderer when they broke in. 3. I was hoping not to say this, but it seems as though I have to. Mrs. Olivia has been found practicing murdering techniques on a dummy in one of her friend's basements. She has been practicing throwing and penetrating the heart from a small in the back. Miss Amelia's body was found with a puncture in that same spot. That is my evidence that Mrs. Olivia might be the murderer. Eleanor finished. She stared at Olivia, who was starting back at her. She looked as if she wanted to say something. And the great thing about Judge Chester was that she knew that look. Mrs. Olivia Bailey, would you like to add something? Yes, please, she said. I would like to say that the information Miss Gray has given is false. 1. Yes, when we were children, we would fight, but we would play fight. Those times when I won was the times that my sister would let me, because we all knew that she was the better fighter in the family. I only fought her on occasion so that she could find new tricks. The judge looked quite fed up here. Mrs. Bailey, I understand where you are coming from, but we do not have the time for you to explain yourself. You may moan all you like, but for the time being, I have to trust the detective, Miss Gray. Now then, Miss Riley, explain what you were doing at the time of the murder. A tall girl with black hair and brown eyes stood up. She was wearing one of the shortest dresses Eleanor had ever seen. I didn't even know there was a murder until you told me before yesterday on the phone, she said, poised and calm. Too poised and calm, which wasn't natural for a suspect, unless they were the murderer, or she was just a calm person in general. But Eleanor and Riley had gone to the same school, and if Riley lacked something, it was calmness, patience, and calmness. It's not natural, Eleanor said, for somebody to be so calm when they are being interrogated. She was standing now and walking towards Riley, her blonde hair flowing in the air, her black hat covered over her hazel eyes, her jeans reaching her ankles where her black boots reached, her black leather jacket over a red shirt. One would think that a suspect would be fighting to stay out of prison, wouldn't they? A criminal would seem calm, to cover up their fear. Wouldn't you say so? Miss Gray asked, slamming her hands on Riley's desk, leaning over to stare into her eyes, to see the truth. I disagree, Miss Gray. Riley responded. An innocent person would not fight, because they would know that they do not need to serve time in prison. May I ask, Miss Riley, how many times you have been a detective trying to solve a crime? None. But if I must say so myself, I do watch a lot of court on television. And when we try to figure out who the criminal is, we are correct most of the time. And is court your favorite thing to watch? Yes. And at that, Miss Gray walked away and sat down, crossed legs on her desk, and hat tipped over her eyes, but keeping an eye on all three suspects. Now, Emma Williams, explain what you were doing at the time of the murder. I was working at my restaurant, ma'am, Emma said. She was the only one who wasn't wearing a dress. Instead, she wore a white top and gray leggings. Her brown hair covered her eyes, but Eleanor could still make out that they were the color of a storm at sea, a wild and free storm, but shy, just like Emma's character. And what exactly do you do at your restaurant? Miss Gray asked. I am a waitress. I take orders of food and drinks. I am quite familiar with what a waitress is, but what I do not understand is how you know Miss Amelia Bailey. From all the records we have seen, we have not heard anything that mentions Miss Bailey. So tell me, Miss Williams, how do you know Amelia? After a moment's hesitation, Emma said thoughtfully, our parents were close friends when they were younger. I grew alongside the Bailey sisters, but we kept it a secret. That is all the information we need from you, Emma, Eleanor said in a flat tone. After thinking thoughtfully, I have decided on who the criminal is. Judge Chester stared at Eleanor, though was not surprised. I have decided, Miss Gray went on, that the criminal is nobody. Everyone in the room was shocked. There were soft murmurs. Eleanor could only make out a few. What does she mean by nobody? Surely she has made a mistake. Silence, the judge shouted. Miss Gray, I do not understand. There has been proof of Miss Amelia Bailey's death. How is there nobody who killed her? Let me explain. Eleanor started. I am correct that only I saw the dead body, yes? Well, there was a puncture in her skin, in the same small of her back, as Miss Olivia was training. However, the sisters were only play fighting, like they did when they were little. They had agreed that they are allowed to use sharp weapons, and the reason Olivia was found training was for that match. Amelia was using their training room, and when the match started, Miss Amelia couldn't find her armor, so she thought she would be fine. Sadly, she died from blood loss. Yes, there was a puncture in her back, but it was very small. And somehow, overnight, she had died from blood loss. Miss Riley, you and Amelia were good friends when little, and you both loved watching court. I know from the information you gave me, you kept saying we instead of I or me. You meant Amelia as the other person, and Emma Williams. Or should I say Emma Bailey? Emma Amelia Bailey. Amelia had a twin sister, an unknown twin sister that Mr. and Mrs. Williams agreed on raising. I believe Amelia Bailey's full name is Amelia Emma Bailey. Yes, it is. So that concludes it. Nobody is guilty. Amelia Emma Bailey's death was unintentional. And she was finished. Another case closed. And she walked out of the hall to her apartment across the street. The Rolodex Robbery. Last week, tragedy struck, and my home was broken into. I came home exhausted from work one day to see the glass in my door shattered, cupboards ajar, papers strewn about the floor. Naturally, I sprinted back outside and immediately called the police as my heart was attempting to shatter my ribs. Thankfully, the police showed up fairly quickly and cleared the house. Whoever broke in was long gone. Won the one hand. I was relieved, because if I had walked fully in and they were still there, who knows what could have happened? On the other hand, I had no idea who did this, and now it would require an investigation. Once the crime scene investigators cleared the house for me to enter, I took a quick inventory of what was missing. TV? Still there. Jewelry? Here. Computer? It's been accessed, but nothing was added or deleted. Any major items of worth were still there, but I still had one more place to look. I went into my kitchen and checked the false bottom in the cupboard underneath my sink. My heart splattered into the floor when I saw that the safe that I normally kept there was missing. There was a giant, gaping hole in the dust where my super secure safe used to be. Officers, officers, I cried. I know what's missing. I know what they were after. One of them flipped to a new page in her notebook. Okay? What is it? My family's secret recipes. They were all in a Rolodex that I kept in a triple-locked safe that was hidden underneath a cupboard. The two police officers shared a look. Recipes? That's what all this is about? I took a breath. Yes, I know how it sounds. You need to understand that my family has been the top champion in every local, regional, and state bake-off for the last 10 years. I come from a very long line of exceptional bakers, and I'm willing to bet that if it came down to it, someone would kill for these recipes. Neither officer looked particularly convinced, but they wrote down my statement anyway. All right, Ms. Norman, we'll analyze our evidence and start on the investigation. We'll get back to you if we get some answers. The police finally cleared out of my house, and I was left with the wreckage of the break-in. For the next 4 hours, I swept, wiped, mopped, and tried to get rid of any sign that someone had broken into my house. In doing all that, I had time to think. Chances are, it'll be a while before I get any answers. If I get any answers, I might just have to take matters into my own hands. Pouring myself a cup of tea, I sat at my kitchen table, staring at my sink. Who would know where I keep those recipes? That's not a particularly obvious spot, and I haven't told many people about it. At that moment, I came up with a particularly genius plan, if I do say so myself. There are a select few people that are aware of not only my family's recipes, but also that hiding spot. That narrowed my suspect list down to 3 people: Julia, Angel, and Cameron. They're all my friends to an extent, but we met through a baking competition last year and bonded over our competitiveness. Normally, they're good people, but when it comes to baking, the gloves are off. I wouldn't put it past one of them to steal my recipes to give their holiday desserts an edge. Sitting at that table, I kept tapping my fingers in thought. The annoyance at both myself and the intruder settled deep in my stomach. I didn't mean for any of them to see that spot in the first place. I was cleaning up before they came over and had my headphones in, so I didn't hear them knock or come in. Honestly, them just coming in when I didn't answer the door should have been a red flag right there. Maison, I had just put the Rolodex away after returning a recipe to it when I turned around to find the 3 of them standing in my kitchen. After that, I should have just moved it, but at the time, I didn't think any of them would go as far as to break into my own home. I'm just glad my daughter wasn't home for any of this. Kate thankfully left yesterday to go a college friend's cabin for the week. I don't know what I would have done if she was here when the intruder broke in. Like I told the officer, people would kill for those recipes. Anyway, back to my plan. I figured that if I could get everyone together for a cookie swap, whoever stole my recipes would be almost certainly arrogant enough to try to outdo everyone else using one of them. Betcha they think that I haven't memorized every single secret ingredient that could distinguish those recipes. They would be wrong. The next day, I called all 3 of them, and we arranged for a cookie swap that Friday. I had 2 days to think about whoever is the most likely to steal my Rolodex and what kind of cookie I should make to destroy all of them. By the time the Friday of the swap rolled around, I had settled on an ooey-gooey, dark chocolate and peppermint cookie that had always been a hit of mine. What I hadn't settled on, however, was who the intruder could be. I had just pulled the last batch of cookies out of the oven when I heard the doorbell ring. I smoothed out my dress and put on my biggest smile before opening the door with the newly repaired window. "Hey!" I cheered. "Happy holidays!" Despite the freezing weather, they all smiled and greeted me in turn. I let them into the house and offered to take their cookies back to the kitchen. While they were preoccupied with discarding their bundles of layers, I snuck a peek at each of their cookies. Sprinkle-covered shortbread? Nope. We're not really a shortbread family. We prefer richer flavors. Sugar cookies? Like every family, we do have a classic sugar cookie recipe, but I can't be sure if this is it until I try it. Red velvet cookie with vanilla buttercream frosting? Now that sounds familiar. Unfortunately, I'm going to have to try this one too, to confirm. I grabbed the wine glasses and tucked the bottle under my arm to join my guests in the living room. For the first few minutes, we just chatted about small nothings. The weather, the traffic, how good the wine was, blah, blah, blah. So, Grace, what's new? Anything exciting happen recently? Angel asked. Do I tell them to see how they react? Or do I test their reactions by not saying anything? Nothing much. Work is busy as ever, and I'm just preparing for the holidays with Kate. Christmas shopping, decorating, the Christmas card. You know, the works, I tried to say, as casually as possible. Julia nodded along sympathetically. I feel ya. Between trying to get presents and wrap presents and fighting with the in-laws, who are staying with us right now, by the way, without asking first, I'm absolutely swamped. She sounds a little too busy to be breaking into my house. Congrats, Julia. You're at the bottom of the list. And you, Cameron? What's going on in your life? He took a sip of wine. A much calmer holiday season than you guys, apparently. Jason and I are having a pretty quiet Christmas this year. And unlike you all, I'm not 60 and don't send out Christmas cards. We knew he meant well, but we jokingly acted insulted regardless. Well, you should. What else is your mother going to cry over when you don't return for Christmas? Angel said. Probably the margarita that she'll be sipping on the cruise that she and Dad booked for the holidays, he retorted. I chuckled at that. It didn't, however, change the fact that he had plenty of time to break in to my home. Angel, you're up, I said. Work, study, sleep, repeat. She groaned. Nursing school is kicking my butt. Why did I think this was a good idea? Because you want to further your career and one day get the big bucks, Julia supplied. Angel groaned again and threw her head back. But at what cost? The longer we all chatted, the more disappointed I knew I was going to be when I found out who broke in. I keep forgetting how much I like these guys. I decided to rip the bandage off. All right. Now for the main event. The cookies, I announced. I grabbed the cookies and returned them to their respective owners. I'd like to go first, Julia provided, holding open her container of shortbreads. We all reached in and grabbed one. I put it up to my lips and took a bite. crumbly, but not too dry. Sweet, but not overbearing. Still lacks a bit of flavor. Overall, for a shortbread, that's not too bad. Next up was Angel. We each took a frosted sugar cookie. Elegant design with the decorating. Not too dense, still flavorful, and no secret ingredient. Guess she's off the hook. Finally, it was Cameron's turn. I carefully took a nibble of the red velvet cookie, and right away, I could tell something was off. Well, this doesn't taste right, and the secret ingredient certainly isn't in here. Jason's on a bit of a vegan kick right now. Personally, not a fan, but I still thought I'd give vegan red velvet cookies a shot, he explained. I swallowed the cookie down. The things we do for love. As everyone took one of my cookies, I took a moment to think. No one had any of the secret ingredient or used one of my family's recipes. So, either they're not as cocky as I thought, or they didn't do it. As everyone finished their assessments of my treat, I prepared my next move. Actually, when I said not much was happening, that was a lie. A few days ago, my house got broken into. My family's Rolodex of recipes was stolen. I glanced over their faces. Dang it. Nothing but pity or shock. I'm so sorry. That sucks. That's awful. Are you okay? Thank you, but I'm fine. Wait. Why are you telling us this now? Cameron asked, suspicious. Well? All of a sudden, my phone started ringing. One moment, I stepped away into the kitchen. Kate, sweetie, what's up? Everything all right? I asked. Yeah, Mom. I just had a quick question. How much flour goes into the sugar cookie recipe? That was not what I was expecting her to ask. What? How much flour is in the sugar cookie recipe? I can't read Grandma's handwriting for this part. I took a breath. Honey, do you have all the recipes? Yeah. Sorry. I left the kitchen all a mess. I couldn't remember where it was, and Aubrey was rushing me. And I promised everyone that we would make our special sugar cookies. I left it all in the note on the door. By the way, did the Franklin boys apologize for throwing an ice ball through the window? All the pieces were coming together. It was my daughter who took the recipes and made a mess, and the annoying boys across the street that shattered my door window. My house hadn't been broken into after all. Her note just must have fallen into the puddle from the ice ball and gotten ruined, so I didn't see it. I felt a lot better knowing that none of my friends were to blame for this. No, they didn't. But I'll talk to them later. It's 2.5 cups for one batch. And when you add the secret ingredient, do not let them see. Understood? I told her. And please, don't take the Rolodex without asking me again. Sorry, Mom. Will do. Thanks. Love you. Love you too, I said. Before hearing the tone, I came back out to the living room, 20 pounds lighter with that new information. Where were we? I asked. You were telling us why you're just now sharing the news that your house was broken into, Cameron supplied. I looked at my friends, who could be competitive, but deep down would never go this far. and I felt guilty for ever thinking they could have done this. Just to be dramatic, I suppose, I said. With that, they all smiled, nudging my shoulder. Angel said, "Well, leave it to you." I smiled back and took a bite of my own cookie. Secret recipes or not, I'm a dang good baker.